all these different requirements, you end up with something that is complex because at the same time, you would like to achieve environmental integrity. Under the CDM, we did a lot of things to simplify. So we introduced POA, we come up later on with a standardized baseline. The main purpose was to simplify, but I must say it was not enough. And we come up saying at the end, okay, we want to simplify something that is by nature complex and difficult to simplify. Why don't we take the complexity and shift it at the site of the regulatory body so that the user of the mechanism will no more see the complexity? Like when we are using our smartphone, you know, kids, you give him a smartphone, he immediately knows how to use it. You don't need to read any guidance. This is exactly what they have done. They took the complexity and they shift it at their side so that the user of the equipment do not see the complexity. This is exactly what guided the group of organizations, UNFCCC, the World Bank, EBRD, and UNDP, to say, okay, why don't we take the element of the entire project cycle and then look at where the complexity are and shift them at our side. It will simplify for the user. It will be still complex, but the user will not see the complexity. And it will streamline. This is one of the other criticisms against the CDM. The assessment time was so long, sometimes 2 years and even more than that. So something needed to be done to streamline and then also reduce the transaction cost. So to be able to do that, you need to digitize end-to-end the entire activity cycle. And on top of that, if you also digitize the carbon market, you come up with something that has been a dream in the past, but that can be turned now into reality. I have always been saying this mechanism will be extremely efficient the day where a woman in a rural area in Africa will operate a clean cook stove and simultaneously the carbon finance resulting from the GHG emission reduction of its activity will come into her digital wallet. This was a dream. Now with the project that our different organizations are running, it can become reality. So we have here a panel that will share with you what has been already done and what are the next steps moving forward. And I will hand over to Chandra, who has been amazing in putting in place this group, because what happened is each of us was working on some piece of the puzzle. And then Chandra bring all of us together and say, oh, I just realized that each of us is actually managing one piece of the puzzle. Why don't we work together so that we have the entire puzzle in place? So thank you for your leadership, Chandra.
Thank you, Masamba. And Masamba has been an amazing partner sitting here at the UNFCCC, guiding us in the overall process. What we'll do today, my name is Chandrasekhar Sinha. I'm the global lead for carbon markets and finance at the World Bank. And what you have here is a very impressive set of partners in this effort from the institutions that Masamba mentioned. In addition to the UNFCCC, there's the UNDP, there is EBRD, and there are other partners like the European Space Agency, IETA, and a range of other partners who've helped us work on this initiative. And quite frankly, over the last year or so, as the speakers will describe, we have developed the minimum viable product for an end-to-end digital ecosystem. And you will have UNFCCC Panna presenting on the automation of the PDD generation process. For those of you who spent a lot of time and writing PDDs, we hope to make this a painless process of answering a few questions and having the full PDD generated for you. Then we will have the whole process of the workflow automated on a web-based platform that the UNDP has developed. So a totally paperless kind of a process, giving access to validators and through to the registries, which Alexandra will describe. Then the whole challenging idea of moving to digital MRV systems, having automated process of monitoring, reporting, and verification, which greatly simplifies the monitoring process, makes it much faster, much more efficient, much more transparent, which Dimitri and my colleague, Dimitri from EBRD and my colleague Mert from the World Bank will describe, and how that's been achieved. All of the DMRV data going straight into the registry system, which is developed in partnership with the UNDP and the World Bank, 3 different registry offerings, all of which connected to the CAD Trust, which is a metadata layer for the carbon market. That's the end-to-end digital ecosystem that is there, I think, on the next slide. Gemma is controlling the slide, so my colleague Gemma, who's been leading the work from the World Bank side on the overall effort, I think will describe the core registry. Reina from UNDP will describe the UNDP registry. All of the system that you see described here are open source, are interoperable, as Masamba was indicating. These different pieces are modular, can be fit together, will talk to each other. And we are happy to say to you that we have the minimum viable product for all of these systems in place, and will be described in more detail in the rest of the session. And my suggestion would be that we go through the presentation and then keep the questions and answers to the end. And with that, may I invite Panna to take us through the automated PDD module. Panna?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's good. So thank you, Masamba, Chandra, and Gemma for organizing this wonderful event. My part in this is this PDD tool, which UNFCCC has been working for quite some time under a mandate from the CDM-EB, though we have been spreading resources thin, and that's why it took so long. But it's a thing which originated, like Masamba said, originated in very elementary form as automatic or as a spreadsheet in the beginning, then came to be a web-based interface, then is in its present form a smart web-based interface which can anticipate and parse the information already provided and then ask the next question. So it's kind of a smart web-based interface, which helps the interested project developers to develop CDM projects. Now, this was already described in introduction, that the CDM methodological landscape is complex, more than 200 methodologies, and there are many more tools. So it was in most cases, it was normal for people who wanted to access CDM to engage services of consultants, of experts, CDM experts. And of course, this puts a situation somewhat asymmetrical in cases of countries where such an expertise not available, or you can't pay the high fees of experts. And this was definitely an access barrier. And that was in mind of the EB also when they started to sponsor this project, apart from the quality advantages which it brings. For example, the PDDs earlier had the difficulties of having different size. Some would be 100 pages, some would be 30 pages. 30 pages is probably the reasonable size, so it could be less, it could be 20, but people put all sorts of information there because they didn't know there was no standard model. And over the time, the CDM PDD became more standardized, and even the developers, project developers, they understood what should go into the projects, and now this web-based interface definitely allows consistently the information which is relevant from the point of emission reductions. That only goes into it, and not other stories which people want to say about them, which they can, of course, have in annex documents, but the document is structured. And this also facilitates the job of the verifying and validating body, because they know in which section what to expect. So there's idea of enhanced accessibility and then accessibility of data as well. For instance, there is a very good service called CDM Pipeline, in which 8,000 PDF documents they have studied manually and compiled a database. But such a work would probably not be needed if projects are registered through the digital interface, because every piece of information is already in a database during the process of preparation of PDD. So not only will the database be more comprehensive, it will be in real time available and reliable, and this data can also be used by project developers and by the regulator for other purposes. So this was the solution, the response, digitalized methodologies, a web-based interactive application, and automated workflow. This part is, of course, yet to come, workflow. And now with important partners like we have, the World Bank, UNDP, this workflow thing also will work. And in the end, we have what Masamba described as the vision of end-to-end digital method of operating carbon market projects. We expect that this is going to be much bigger, not just CDM, but all other standards would be accommodated, which I saw in CAD Trust database structure. But our part is based on CDM and the World Bank warehouse database will be probably having a global overview, capturing data and attributes from all programs. So how it works, this on the other side, on the right side, you see the interface, which the user might expect to access when he wants to build up a document, such as project design document or a component CPA-DD or a program POA-DD. And then they would click on the start button and they'll go to a next screen. So next slide, please. So they will go to something like this, where they have their account. And this is specific to the user. If you have a UNFCCC account, which means a UNFCCC ID, then you're able to see this particular window. And in this window, you're able to see your own proposals, the draft PDDs, which you might have built. And those you have facility of copying that or deleting that. And copying means you're advancing to the next version and then keep on building your PDD until you are satisfied. So during the process of editing or building your PDD, you will have what the second window shows, this kind of interface where you are asked questions and there are responses, questions and responses, and all this process is interactive and driven by the logic of the methodology, which is behind this interface, depending on what you are going to do. And the methodology is in the conventional sense that a specific piece of methodology is to be used by the user. This has been turned on its head in the sense that the methodology is determined by the content of the project. What the project is trying to do, that determines what the methodology is, rather than you start off with a given methodology and try to build a PDD around that. So the whole idea is, instead of having those many methodologies with small differences, the idea is what is needed to calculate the emission reductions of this particular type of activity. And for instance, under what circumstances is this type of activity could be additional or not additional. So all those things, they are in form of digital logic behind the interface, and the user interacts with the digital interface. And finally, he discovers his project is additional or not additional, which is also an interesting inversion of the responsibility, because here, traditionally, the board, the regulator asks the project developer, prove that your project is additional. Then he looks at additionality and definitions and methods and tries to apply all this. And that also has a bit of conflict of interest and a moral hazard, because he would, of course, like to have it additional. But when he has described his project objectively, and at the end, it is the system which decides whether it's additional or not, which is more kind of objective, and because onus is on the regulator to say that this particular activity is additional or not on the owner of the project. They would, of course, like to say maybe that our project is additional. So this is also, apart from shifting complexity, this is also a different shift here we see in this new electronic or digital method. So we see that through these steps, the value added would be efficient process PDD development, in which the user is focusing on his project. He knows the engineering details, he knows the emission factors, or emission kind of fuels he uses, the kind of technologies, the kind of services he produces, and things like that. He's not concerned much about the whole landscape of CDM rules and regulations. And this saves time and effort and makes it more accessible for everyone to do PDD. And the second is the data validation, automated calculation. So this is a quality thing. Quality is improved because data is validated even by mistake. If the user puts in a wrong type of data or wrong data which is out of range, which can be validated based on the substantive knowledge which the system has. For instance, you do something, not calorific value which doesn't exist or such a thing, then this is corrected on the spot, and you get kind of a quality gate for correct data. And data is validated, is put at input time. So this is the second one, and then calculations are performed digitally, which is another advantage. Calculations, algorithms, and equations. In implementing those equations, all the due diligence is done before building the system, and if the system is built correctly, the user doesn't have to worry, and probably the regulator and the auditor also is relaxed and can have more confidence in the calculations because they're done to a piece of software. Like we trust Excel, we can also come to trust an automated piece of calculator here behind this particular software. And the third one is a standardized PDD content structure, because in order to automate any process, you need to have a standard format and a standard content as well. So the final PDD you get is objective, it is consistent, well, across projects, across project developers, across methodology types, you have consistent structure, and you have a standardized format of PDD. So this limits the subjective and unrelated content entering into the PDD. So these are the main value added. We have run through a cycle of road testing by stakeholders, and they have confirmed all this value. They do validate this tool provides them these advantages in building a PDD. So that's in short the story of PDD. Thank you.
Thank you, Panna. In the interest of time, I'll ask Alex straight away to take us through the UNDP workflow platform and the National Registry.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Masamba, Chandra, and especially Gemma for driving this work. As Chandra already said, I will talk about the UNDP ITMO workflow platform and the connection to the World Bank Registry. So next slide. More and more countries have now started to build their national capacities on Article 6. Countries have begun to simultaneously work on Article 6 frameworks for Paris-compliant carbon markets, while also entering into cooperation agreements, both as host and acquiring countries. And UNDP's workflow platform has been built to simplify the process flows of carbon projects. It supports all steps between the registration of a project developer to the request for issuance of a project, including all steps in between, by managing the whole activity cycle, so including document uploads, providing access for validators, verifiers, and buyers. The linkage of the workflow platform to the World Bank Core Registry will offer countries a seamless solution to digitalize and monetize carbon assets. It gives countries direct access to simplified registry functionalities, and it enables them to participate in carbon markets cost efficiently and within a short time frame. The modular components relevant for the Article 6 project cycle and its implementation processes help streamlining complexity through a modular system. And through the linkage between the workflow platform and the core registry, countries will get access to an end-to-end digital system that supports the whole project workflow, the creation of carbon assets, and the issuance, the transfer or cancellation, and ultimately also the monetization of mitigation outcomes. Next slide. From the public website of the workflow platform, a user can log in after registering. Everyone can register as project developer, as validator, or verifier. The screenshots on the left side of the slide are the registration pages for a project developer and for a validator or a verifier. The platform has a two-factor authentication and authorization process to restrict what users have access to on the platform. And in the country setup section of the workflow platform, new countries can be created and configured. And within the country setup section, there's also flexibility to select and set up different roles, for example, project developer, validator, verifier, Article 6 office, or buyer. Each role can be fully customized. While the country setup section is restricted to the country admin, the project section of the workflow platform can be accessed by different users. And all users, as per previously configured roles, can access the project section, select the country for which they are registered, and create a project or access project information as a validator or verifier. The country admin has the rights to approve or reject applications, requests for authorizations, and requests for issuances. And to improve the monitoring processes of carbon projects, monitoring applications and photo monitoring features have also been integrated into the platform. You can see screenshots on the monitoring app on the right side of the slide. The app is linked to the monitoring module on the platform, and it allows project proponents to upload monitoring information directly to the platform, even directly from a mobile device. On the platform, the information can then be directly accessed by the verifier. The app shows the monitoring parameters for an agricultural project, which is currently implemented in Ghana. The established monitoring parameters follow the requirements of the methodology for methane emission reductions by adjusted water management practices in rice cultivation. To streamline verifications, the monitoring reports are then automatically created and made accessible to verifiers. Next slide. And in order to offer this end-to-end digital system, the platform is now linked to the World Bank Core Registry, which automates issuances of carbon credits and ensures transparency and compliance with international best practice. To integrate the workflow platform and the core registry, a new customized step was added to the platform, which collects data that are sent to and processed by the core registry. And this new dedicated step allows for collection of project information for the registry in the country section of the platform. At the same time as a modular country section of a newly added country is set up, this customized step for registry connection is also established. And after the customization phase, once the country is live, every added project will include in its workflow this connection step to the registry. The step has a special identifier application programming interface for data exchange. This means the World Bank Core Registry can collect information about the countries, read the projects, and fetch all the information that is on the platform. The data inputs are then automatically collected and validated by the core registry and either accepted or rejected. In case of rejection, the screenshot on the top, the step is pushed back to the user with indication that to fix the data inputs, and the user that can then resubmit and the data validation process starts again. In case of acceptance, the screenshot below, inputs are elaborated, the systems are connected, the project information is mirrored on the workflow, and the workflow will proceed as established on the platform. Last but not least, I want to also highlight the implicit linkage of the registry to the Climate Action Data Trust. This allows countries using the workflow platform to seamlessly connect as peers with other countries and independent standards supporting climate actions worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And over to you, Dimitri.
Thank you, Chandra. In interest of time, I'll try to be pretty quick on our part. So on this next slide, Gemma, please. Yes, thank you. Just to outline what are the two systems that we're talking about. So EBRD together with the World Bank as part of this joint effort under the D4C, we came to the understanding that we have developed separately at the time 2 systems which perform different functions across the ecosystem of the carbon market. And on the left, you see basically the underlying system, where the mitigation results are being measured and counted and quantified. And then in the middle, and this is in this case, we have EBRD has put in place a digital MRV system, and it's currently deployed to the renewable energy projects. And then the World Bank then has developed the registry, for the carbon registry, which basically handles the different functions of the carbon cycle. So here then we came to the realization we can play together and showcase how these 2 systems can be integrated in a seamless way, and demonstrate the benefits of the integration. And the next slide, please, Jamal. And here I'll have to do a bit of a tango here jointly with Mert. It takes 2 to tango, as you know. So we'll switch back and forth a bit here. So the 2 systems that are briefly described here, essentially. So the MRV provides the automated monitoring, quantification, and a publication of the results, the outcomes, the emission reductions. And the registry provides the issuance of credits. So the main drive here and understanding was that by automating the process, we can provide more transparency, speed to the market, and thereby liquidity, and provide a shorter term for the assets to be put on the market, and also support the transparency and integrity. And we've already put in place a pilot, and my colleague Mert from the World Bank will elaborate a bit on the technical side of the pilot that we've designed. Mert, please. Next slide.
Thank you very much, Henry. Hello, everyone. In this end-to-end integration, we have 2 systems, carbon registry and the digital MRV system. On the left-hand side, you see a screenshot from the MRV system. On the right-hand side is the screenshot from carbon registry. This is the issuance screen. So in this integration project, the MRV system and carbon registry synchronized project information. Basically, the MRV system retrieved project information, such as project name, project type, project sector from the carbon registry. And the MRV system pushed daily emission reduction values into the carbon registry. And this was done on a daily basis. And in the end of the test period, which was a month, carbon registry issued mitigation outcomes. And here you can see the values matching and the issued mitigation outcomes on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. I will hand back to Dimitri. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Mert. Yes, so I think you probably didn't clearly see on the screen. Sorry. Basically, so the numbers that you saw there, so the numbers, the underlying emission reductions coming from the DMRV were fully transposed and featured in the registry, and then presented as the issued units. We just selected basically there is an actual project, the projects that are connected to the digital MRV system. So the data is based on the real-time project, but it's being processed for confidentiality reasons to demonstrate the feasibility of the overall approach. And basically the elements that we try to kind of to demonstrate here is the automation of the process, both on the monitoring side, on the reporting, and also on the insurance side. And this has been shown in a full chain. The data collection is automated at the side of the digital MRV system. And the frequency of the exchange is basically is flexible, and as I would like maybe to refer to the point that Masamba made at the beginning, where his kind of vision is to have this almost in real time, where a woman in operating a cook stove can automatically start getting the credits monetized. Basically, what we've demonstrated here is there's a lot of flexibility in terms of structuring this. So we've shown the daily transfer of data between daily assets, daily carbon credits being generated in the digital MRV system and then transferred into a registry for issuance. But that frequency can then be either scaled up or down depending on the needs of the project. The system, the underlying premise in the digital MRV is that the data that is being transferred into registry is verified by the system based on the predefined rules, so which minimizes or almost fully avoids the need for manual verification. Any data that has not passed the checks is not transferred into the registry, so that also adds to the speed of the verification and eventually the speed of the issuance. So next slide, please. Well, this is definitely just the beginning. The pilot itself has been relatively short, took a short time to implement because of the different constraints, but we do see the next steps that we can try to implement going forward, including linking with the UNFCCC's digital methodology tool to automate the full documentation workflow, including the exchange and by dual data flow between the different systems. We do see and we'll try to implement the connection to the national MRV system, the database of the projects in the country, which will allow also to feed in some of the additional data points between these different systems. There is definitely a need to, say, integrate, for instance, the data related to the emission factors, which are supposed to be available in the national MRV system, and that's what then can be fed into both the digital MRV and eventually affect the results that are being published into registry. And we'd like to see how we can basically replicate this to more projects going forward and demonstrate maybe different types of project, different technologies. Thank you.
Okay. Over to you, Gemma and Reina.
Okay, so I will go first. So from the UNDP side, we've been approaching this with the digital public good angle. The problem statement here is that, as everybody knows, managing both the GHG inventory nationally determined contribution reporting requirements and climate finance opportunities is actually one of the most important aspects, even in the carbon market, for credibility of data and to make sure that there's integrity in the market. So we approach this as a whole of the transparency system, which if you look back in the original chart that we prepared, it is the second row of the chart, and also the carbon registry, which is interoperable to the MRV system. And so as we are supporting 120 countries in the NDC implementation process, we found that many countries are in the process of developing a very similar type of system. And so instead of developing these systems one by one, we took this digital public good angle, meaning it is everything is open source. The registries that we are building now is basically for national sovereignty and data, as well as the source codes, so that each country can easily download and install the system into their own server space. The way we approach it, of course, we worked as part of this MVP and made sure that it is all interoperable with each of the components of the working group members' systems, so that again, once the country actually decides that they would like to have a national sovereign carbon registry and or a nationally sovereign MRV system, they will be able to have the option to switch on and off the different integration with the various systems that are out there. Next slide, please. And just to elaborate more on this slide, you see that there are several components or modules to the source code. So the big one in the middle is actually a Article 13 transparency system, where the country can store the GHG inventory, also the finance flow, and also have some analytics and reporting functions. And then next to that is the carbon registry, which in this group we call it as a standard carbon registry. The carbon registry on the right, or in the more toward the middle of the slide, this has the functions of issuing and managing credits as well as retirement. And you can see that it is connected to the voluntary platform that Alex spoke. Once the platform identifies that this is ready for credit issuance, that information gets sent to the National Carbon Registry so that the national officer can issue the credit as well as manage it from there on. And all of that information is already integrated with the CAD Trust so that it will be sent to the CAD Trust automatically, again, if the country chooses to put on that function. Another point of this is that we are using a blockchain for recording all of the activities that happen on the carbon registry so that it is tamper-free, and it is also, in case something happens to the platform, the record will remain in the blockchain community. And also the other point is that because this is talking about integration with other systems that are out there, including the EBRD, DMRV, instead of connecting it directly, the way we approached it is that we have a GitHub space where any DMRV tool provider can come in and actually look at the API codes and make sure that they can connect it from the outside. The carbon registry has been utilized in Namibia. I believe there will be an announcement tomorrow at COP, and then Indonesia, as well as ongoing in Seychelles, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and some other countries. Next slide, please. And again, the approach we are taking is a digital public infrastructure approach. This is all open sourced on a GitHub space with documentation so that innovators in the local community who might have very good DMRV tools, so that what Dimitri explained as a vision, and also Masamba in the beginning, when there is a more granular or more smaller scale DMRV systems, they can all come in and innovate on top of this system. Instead of the system trying to do everything, the vision here is that it will enhance the local innovation by different providers. We also have a community of practice where a lot of the practitioners also on this panel, but also from other different digital communities, as well as the countries that we support, are exchanging information every 3 months and promoting self-cooperation and to provide governance to the code that we are building as a group. It's of course in partnership with the members here, as well as other projects that are related to carbon market establishment, as well as transparency. And then the code will be upgraded following any change in the international requirements or evolving needs, and it will always be open sourced so that, again, as a big community of global practitioners, we can continue to enhance and build on top. And I'll pass it to Gemma.
Thank you, Reina, and good afternoon, everyone. Last but not least, we're going to close this technical round of presentations with the World Bank Open Source Registry. The World Bank developed this open source registry in addition to the other registry part of the D4C offering, with core functionalities aligned to Article 6 and also automatic sync to the Climate Action Data Trust. So the main key goals were, first, a registry that is low cost, open source, and enables the country to track and do accounting for Article 6 requirements. And especially in this layer, it leverages the Climate Action Data Trust data model, and this helps to reconcile, aggregate, and harmonize carbon market data. As many of you may know, the Climate Action Data Trust is a global platform, and you'll see at COP some announcements that aggregates and harmonizes data. In addition to enabling the tracking and the accounting, the registry also enables the issuance and transaction of carbon credits. This registry is using blockchain and tokenization technology, so it enables to create digital carbon assets, and that means converting traditional carbon credits into digital carbon assets, like as a record or representation of such. and is running on Chia network technology. And finally, the third goal is to leverage this registry to foster capacity building and experiential learning on how to use a registry, what are the technical and functional requirements, how do you do the transactions, and so on. We're working with many countries right now testing this registry, including Bhutan, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. And actually tomorrow, Bhutan will be launching its own very national carbon registry based on the open source core registry. You can attend at the Bhutan Pavilion at 9:30 a.m. So this is, in a nutshell, the open source registry and the key objectives that are aimed to. In terms of the data model that I mentioned before, this slide is quite granular, but we like to show it because it provides an overview of what are the data parameters that the country needs to enter to use the open source national registry and to connect to the Climate Action Data Trust. As you can see, the data model is about information on projects, on units, and also on the governance list values about what is the status of the units, the status of projects. And taking a step back, we're building these end-to-end solutions not only to enhance efficiency and transparency of the market, but it's also collective action of interoperability and standardization into the carbon markets, as we know that there's fragmentation and infrastructure has this bottom-up approach that can help towards this goal. In terms of what are the key applications and functionalities of this open source registry, as I mentioned before, it enables the issuance and transfer of digital carbon assets. Let's start from the beginning. It has an application called Tokenization Engine. This engine enables converting carbon credits into the digital carbon assets, and this may bring some benefits, such as it enables the fractionalization of ownership. It also lets pooling the different digital carbon assets by attributes. Once we have tokenized these carbon credits, we then can use the wallets, and the wallets can let the owner of the wallet securely store and send and receive the digital carbon assets, and can also transfer them to another entity. And then once we have access to these wallets that help us to manage and view details on these carbon credits, we have the Explorer, the third application, which automatically detects and records the credit issuances and retirements. This full end-to-end process of tokenizing these carbon credits, it not only gives us the fractionalization and potential liquidity, but because it's running on the blockchain, it gives us also transparency and traceability of transactions. And finally, it also enhances the democratization of access. So it enables broader access by investors and different stakeholders of the market. Before I wrap up on the core registry, I just wanted to share a few observations in our work of deploying digital infrastructure with countries on carbon markets. If we want to enable a future where we have a scalable and high integrity carbon market, this means prioritizing digital infrastructure. And prioritizing means to look at what are the technical and functional needs through gaps assessment, needs assessment, establishing lessons learned and practices based on experiences with countries. What are the capacity building needs? What are the expertise in IT, in software, in hardware? What are the requirements? And then, of course, looking at the bottlenecks, potential bottlenecks that we have at the regulatory and policy side. So are there any policy barriers that we should anticipate in terms of the institutional landscape and so on? And finally, also, of course, the deployment and the maintenance costs, because we need to ensure that while we develop low-cost open source infrastructure, it also has a sustainability model that lasts for years, and it's not locked up by a specific team or by a specific requirement. So I will stop here, and over to you, Chandra.
Thank you, Gemma, and thanks everyone for the presentation. I think the overall observation that I'd like to make is that the goal here is to provide open source, interoperable systems which allow you to digitize the full value chain of the carbon markets. And what you heard from different presenters today was the development of a minimum viable product, as it's called in the IT business, the fundamental functioning elements of the different components. There's still a lot of work to be done. I think Dimitri talked about the need for us to integrate the digital MRV system to the PDD generation process. There's still work to be done. Countries would need to make a choice of which of the elements they would want implemented for their own infrastructure. But the idea for us is to reduce the entry barrier to participate in the carbon market, reduce the transaction costs, increase transparency, increase the speed at which the carbon market functions. So, the big picture message is that the elements of this full digital ecosystem is now essentially in place. It needs to be customized in a country. The country needs to make choices of which elements they would want to digitize. And for the partners in the Digital for Climate group to provide that customization to a particular country which is interested in moving forward with these different elements of the carbon market. With that, we have a few minutes. I think we started a little late for questions or any comments that people may have. So if there is interest in follow-up question, happy to take those now and address this to any particular panelist, or to, if the questions are in general nature, then we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just come up here. So I have been working with UNDP as a consultant in this process, and maybe there's just one thing I'd like to mention here, that the experience in Namibia especially, it was that you cannot design the infrastructure without running first projects through it, and you can't run first projects through it without the infrastructure being ready. So we really have to have this collaborative and dynamic approach together with the countries, where we run a few, maybe even very small scale pilots to just see the needs of the different stakeholders. This is especially true in IT development, because I don't know how many of you had the pleasure to work with IT, but if you don't tell them exactly to the point what they have to do, they will do something else and it will not work. So every time they do something, you have to test it with the actual user, go back, change it, test it one more time, go back, change it. So this is really, I think at the moment, this is the biggest bottleneck, this coordination between early startup projects that are going through and infrastructure development at the same time. So, yeah.
If there are no more questions, I noticed that the next set of panelists are here. Just one question, go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me. Luz Osorio, I'm from Guatemala. It's a Central America country, and I have a question for you. I really think this is really important because we need a systematic system to ingress all carbon markets things. In my country especially, we don't have carbon market yet, but I was thinking about, have you considered to run like a pilot investigation in Latin American countries so they can know their needs? Because like you're saying, IT needs to know specifically what things they need to put in the website, or well, in the digital ecosystem. So have you considered to implement this also in Latin American countries, or do you have some countries in mind so you can run the tests?
Yeah, so Gemma in her presentation indicated the data model based on which the whole structure is organized. The data model came from the Climate Action Data Trust. It won't be very clear here, but this essentially tells you for a carbon market what kind of information needs to be collected and put on the web on the different elements of the mitigation activity that you want to undertake. And it is the starting point of designing of the specific system that Tim talked about. This is the starting point for a discussion with the country on the design of the overall infrastructure for the carbon market. because the logic would be to link it to the Climate Action Data Trust, based on which you design the registry, based on which you design the digital MRV system, and that links back to the automated PDD design process and the web-based project development tool.
Good afternoon. I'm Yishe from Bhutan. Just out of my curiosity, so can this Climate Action Data Trust can be one of the source that we can utilize by the Minister of Finance for any climate tagging, financing sources, or something like to deep dive into some of the donor base or some project base? It is possible, or since it's very new to us, so I would love to hear from your experts. Yeah.
Reina, do you want to take that with regard to the tracking tool?
Chandra, you mean with the transparency system?
Yes, because the question was with regard to tagging process for activities within a particular country, in this instance, Bhutan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so that would be in the transparency system side. There are ways of tagging financial flows, as well as basically all of the projects will have a tagging system, so that so that each activity within each project can be tagged to certain support or action. So perhaps it was not in the CAD Trust, but in the transparency side, there will be a function of doing that as well.
Okay, I see that we are now going over time. So I thank you all, certainly all the panelists who join me in thanking them for this session, and happy to take any questions that follow. If you are looking for the information, the Digital for Climate website has all of the necessary documentation, and we'll put up the presentation there as well. So thank you very much.
We'll be starting our next session soon. So please take your seats. May I request you to please take your seats as we are starting our next session? Yeah. Can you please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen? Excuse me, can you please take your seats? We are starting the next session. So I would now like to request Mr. Masamba Thioe to open this session and make his welcoming remarks. Masamba.
Thank you so much, Nitin, and good afternoon to all of you. My name is Masamba Choi, and I'm leading the Global Innovation